Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fadwa Wazwaz, and I'm doing a presentation today on unraveling, letting go of shame on the spiritual path. So I'd like to first explain why I'm doing this video, and I'd like to be clear on who it's aimed about or what the context behind this video. I write on themes of shame. I don't think anyone has introduced that topic in our community before me. I have looked, searched, went to the library, put their names, anything that predates mine. I did not see anybody who is now constantly going around the globe talking about shame or speaking about it at that time. This particular individual, she popped in right after I started speaking on some of these themes, and she has a large network, and she feels that sense of entitlement that her network somehow gives her rights to my writings and my themes. And she works with, there's Al Barouj Press, who seems to be like one of the organizations. This is her, Yasmin Mogahed, an earlier, much earlier picture than she is now, which is fine. But in any case, I write on a theme. She grabs it. She lurks to her institutes. They promote her, and she goes around the globe. This is a pattern that they do. She goes around the globe, and she takes the theme, and then she claims to have wrote a book, wrote a course, or wrote a seminar. And it's the first time, even though I've been writing on this over and over again. And what she's taking, she's just repackaging from my writings and trying to go around the globe, promoting herself with my writings. Her sister did this. Other teachers did this in their institutes. I write on a theme instead of having the ethics and self-respect to acknowledge that I wrote on this theme and to say, I learned from Fadwa on this. They will not do that. So another student right here, I just caught her this morning. Again, she's engaging in town gossip. She did an entire theme about town gossip based interpreting, playing with conjecture. After she played with conjecture left and right with somebody else, and then she went and started to give you some advice. And then she also grabbed some of my writings, which is the importance of haya as noble restraint, when technically, when I have engaged with these individuals, and this is why some of the reasons I have issues with engagement with them, is they have been engaging in nonstop shaming. Nonstop shaming. Like you have a misunderstanding with them. They don't know how to say, I have a misunderstanding with you. I saw, I observed, I felt, this is the impact on my life. This is what you did, or that I saw you do, or I felt, these are my feelings regarding an action you took. They don't know how to do that. They collude with each other, and then they come up with a conclusion. Starts off with a conclusion, so they make their conclusion their God. That they are not willing to cross-examine that conclusion. The possibility that their God could just be their own. They created that conclusion out of their own assumptions and feelings that is not true. That it's not open to investigation. So if you try to respond, they turn around and they double down, and it's their sole thing is to protect that conclusion, not to protect the truth, to protect their conclusion. So you can never cross-examine them ever about the truths that they have, your own truths. You cannot do that. Their conclusion is God. It's revelation. They're not willing to let it go. In any case, they use shaming in their engagement through this understanding back and forth. It was shame, 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 nonstop shaming me. And one of them was, lo and behold, Yasmin Mogahed. She literally was a nobody when I was writing on a lot of these themes. I never saw her name. Suddenly, they use her as they use this one, as they use other women. They just grab them and they tell them to kind of like write, say about this. And if they see something that you write that they like, they don't have the humility to say, Fadwa wrote this. I don't really like Fadwa, but I know she wrote this. I like what she wrote. No, they find like Dalia Mogahed or Tasneem, or they find Yasmin Mogahed, and they transfer my writings to them, and then they promote them around the globe. So this is what Al Barouj Press does. This organization and others, this is what they do. They create up with a new seminar, new course, and then they promote them all around the world. And they transfer my writings to their institution and to these figures. And then they try to like sell it and claim it. And then they start afterwards to disempower me or to discredit me by trying to portray me as ill, mentally ill, having issues, as though I'm running after them. I'm basically saying, don't claim my writings. This is not your writing. So I have told them more than once, when I see you taking my writings and promoting yourself with a false fabrication that you came up with this new life-changing seminars taught by the first time. No, I've been teaching this for hundreds of times. You are attempting to steal what you never taught because of your arrogance, your pride, your lack of faith, your selfishness, and your entitlement to push what I have been teaching and claim it as yours and make money while doing so. It's also a money-making business for her and for that institute that they do. So these are things that I have discussed. So I will go ahead and claim my writings back to where they belong. People become obsessed with psychoanalyzing and misrepresenting others primarily as a mechanism to protect their own ego and avoid acknowledging their own internal struggles. This behavior is often rooted in self-deception, where an individual characterized in the Quran by the spirit of Zuleikha, and I told Yasmin Mugad, not because she's a woman, because it could be a man, but her and her crowd, they act like Zuleikha. They become obsessed with being right and craving control to hide what they locked away within themselves. Well, she knows this is not her writing. She's not willing to tell the people, her audience on her platform, that this is not her writing. She said, as she's competing, it's like, what are you competing? I present original writings. Bring your own original writings and compete. They claim that their repackaging of my writings and my themes as competing with me. Where's the competition? You didn't add anything new to the conversation. You just took my writings and promoted them as your own. And you made money and you built social status off of theft. You have a platform. If you like my writings, you should have interviewed me on your platform and let your audience know these are the writings of Fadwa Wazwaz. These are the themes discussed by Fadwa Wazwaz, but they will not do that out of shame, because for her to admit that she and her group have been following all my writings, because as soon as I write a theme, the next thing you know, there's this new global seminar by Yasmin Mugad. It's like a pattern, like for the past 10 years. Write a theme and then bang, Yasmin Mugad, new seminar, new course, life-changing material she's coming up with. And it continues, her sister, their group, but never the humility to tell her audience, I got this information from Fadwa Wazwaz. So this is, again, the mindset. It's self-deception. She knows she's lying. She doesn't want her audience to know that she's lying, that she plagiarized someone else's work, repackaged it into a seminar, repackaged it into a book, and is promoting herself with those writings. The role of projection and the psychologist fallacy. A lot of times she promotes herself as a psychologist. She doesn't have a license. Let's just say she does have a license, because some of these individuals, believe it or not, they have a license in psychology. Now, you don't have a relationship with them as a student teacher. There is no student teacher or even a patient client. You don't have that relationship. So the role of projection in the psychologist fallacy is a central reason for this obsession is projection. Like where you're psychoanalyzing others' internal reality, and you move blame and responsibility away from themselves by placing their own angry feelings and inappropriate accusations onto a target. You don't know me. We've never engaged you, like Rania Awad, for example. She's a psychologist, okay? Yasmin Mugad is not a psychologist. She took a course, maybe two, you need a few courses and then you get a bachelor's degree in psychology. Everybody knows that. And then she went and got a master's in communication. But everybody can get like a few courses and get a bachelor's of science in psychology. But she doesn't have anything new. I haven't seen her introduce anything new to the conversation, not her and not members of her institute. It's like you tell them, can you show something that is totally new that you introduce to the conversation? and you don't find anything new. So she comes on stage and she's psychoanalyzing others, but it's like, what is your methodology that you came about with this psychoanalysis? Because you're speaking about someone's internal reality, someone's thoughts, someone's feelings, and unless that person's expressed them in their own words, this is what the Quran teaches us, we can take it that you're actually expressing your own internal reality and your own feelings, and you're just placing it onto them as a relief, a pressure relief, from what you're carrying within. Because one of the things that as somebody who understands these concepts looks for is the methodology. How did you come to know what you know? How did you come to know that this person feels shame? How did you come to know that this person, feels guilty? How did you come to know this? What was your methodology that you arrived at your analysis? Because you're speaking about something that is unseen, is unhidden. How did you come to know that? If you don't give us a clear methodology that is verifiable, that is measurable, how did you come to know what they feel? So the psychologist fallacy, again, it occurs when individuals project their own internal struggles outward, mistaking their own personal discomfort for the external truth of someone else's character. So if you look at that, if you just look at characters like even in the Quran, God always makes us know what they think internally in their own words. He tells us what Satan thinks in his own words, in Satan's own words. He tells us what Pharaoh thinks in Pharaoh's own words. So he never, the Quran teaches us we don't employ the psychologist fallacy. When the Prophet ever discusses the internal reality of others, it's because they have said in their own words, this is their internal reality. So how did you come to know? What is your methodology when you're speaking about how somebody thinks and feels? This is very important to when you're unraveling, because again, the discussion is letting go of shame on the spiritual path, the unraveling. How did you come to know? Because a lot of times what we see in our community are those doing the shaming are actually the same people who are trying to heal the community to let go of shame. And this is why I wrote this right here. So she's doing this seminar, but the same people, literally, this is my experience, the same people who are nonstop engaging in shaming, shame about they don't know how to have a direct one-on-one conversation, are the same people that are going around town giving people advice on how to let go of shame. But you are shaming people. This is my experience with you. How could you give a course on a life-changing seminars on letting go of shame when you are engaging in nonstop shaming? It's like she wants to be the arsonist and the firefighter. You are engaged with your group, with your entire network, shaming nonstop. And now you want to go letting go of shame. If you want to let go of shame, shut your mouth. Shut your mouth. That's how you let go of shame that you have been introducing. If you want to, you don't need a firefighter for some problems. You just need to stop being an arsonist. It's the same thing. How do we unravel, let go of shame? Well, just stop shaming people. It's not rocket science. Just stop shaming people. You don't know somebody, don't speak about them personally. They said something you don't like on social media, then respond to them on social media. You heard something about their life, you're not really sure, it's bothering you. You could ask them, is this true? This is what I heard. If it concerns you, because you ask yourself, people hear things about you. Would you like them to discuss this on social media? Externalizing internal conflict. If someone persistently psychoanalyzes another, they may be using that person as a projection screen. And that's literally what she does. Before this seminar, she went with her husband and they talked about, the wounds, the internal wounds, healing this beyond the surface, to work through conflicts they cannot acknowledge within themselves. So when a person diagnoses others with traits like shame, arrogance, guilt, they're often revealing the very qualities they carry subconsciously. Again, we look at the methodology. How did you come to know what you know about them? So in this sense, every allegation, every false allegation that they make is actually an admission or a confession or revelation about their own conduct. What I'm saying here is what she's really telling us is not about others' shame, but her own shame. She experienced negative emotions. They are lingering. They impact her spiritual growth. She is rediscovering Allah's compassion and forgiveness and the prophetic roadmap for healing. She is full of self-blame, but instead of turning to God, she turned to self-compassion. And you can tell when somebody turned to God or turned to the self. If you turn to the self, you get a crop. You get people to validate you. If you turn to God, you get like actions that preoccupy you with doing good deeds for God. Okay? If you turn to yourself, you get a crop. If you turn to God, then God preoccupies you with deeds that please him for his sake. It's right there in the Quran. Healing past wounds, tools to process emotional pain, unresolved mistake, and long-held mistakes. So she's shaming is what? You don't go shame if you're clean inside. You don't go on this global crusade, jihad, and shame, unless you're not clean inside, you're not healthy. Nobody who's full of love and compassion and, forgiveness starts shaming other people. I have never seen that. I haven't seen any prophet went on this global mission, shame. The prophet went to Medina. He didn't go around shame. They started building a mosque, started building, the infrastructure for an Islamic community. Again, deeds. Become preoccupied with deeds of building the community that will benefit them. I mentioned that a salih, a person who is righteous, he sees a well, it's full of dirt, it's full of rocks. He removes the rocks and the dirt, not just for himself, so that the water can flow to those who cannot reach it. So that's a righteous person. Their actions tell you about who they are. Because when we go to our graves, the people will not follow us. Our friends, our family, they'll not follow us. God tells us through the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings, your deeds will follow you. So one of the ways that if you know you've turned to God and that God has forgiven you is not based on the feelings you have toward yourself or because there's a crowd around you. It's God preoccupies you with deeds that will come with you into your grave, into the next world. That is pleasing to him, that will benefit you. And benefit you in this world, and benefit others, and also benefit you as you transition to the next world. That's how you tell. Tell yourself, if you want to know if God forgave you, what are you thinking about? You're thinking, I'm great, this person likes me, I like myself, or are you thinking subhanallah, for example? Are you praising God? Are you focused on, understanding the words of God? Are you reflecting on the words of God? Are you thinking about, did I make progress from where I was, the version I was yesterday or the day before? Because Islam's about growth. You're supposed to be growing. If you didn't change, then there's something wrong with you. You're not practicing Islam correct. You should be in a perpetual state of growing. You shouldn't be going backwards and you shouldn't be staying still. You should be continually changing. Heal past wounds, tools to process emotional pain, unresolved mistakes, long-held mistakes. Healing past wounds, whatever you've done, let's just give you an example. Given like some of the nonsense they have been thrown. Let's just say you made a mistake. There'll be people like Yasin Ogad and her crew who'll take on that mistake if you made a mistake, and they'll be nonstop attacking you. It could be conjecture, it could be a manipulation. And there'll be people who don't really care about your mistake. They don't know, they don't want to know. They're not going to turn around and ask people for your secret management to figure out what you have done or didn't do. All they care about is if you turn to God. If you turn to God, let's just say you accidentally harm somebody, okay? God will, and you turn to God sincerely and truthfully, he will help you to face the matter where you have to go and face the authorities. You can't just harm somebody and not face consequences, the authorities. If it's something that doesn't concern the authorities, like you did something that maybe that is against your faith, but you recognize it's wrong, but you turn to God and you ask for forgiveness, then God will give you deeds and preoccupy you. By preoccupying you with these deeds, he's rewiring your mind so that you go from committing something wrong, making it a habit, into doing what is good, making that your reality. So this is again where, how does the rewiring your spiritual narrative take place? By turning to God, and sharing your feelings in the presence of God, having that, interaction with God. God will facilitate the road of guidance for you. You're seeking guidance, you're seeking to repair the harm. God will facilitate the road of guidance for you. And he'll preoccupy you with deeds that will rewire your spiritual narrative. You're turning to God. You're not turning to the self. There is no rising again, or, obsessing with your ego and how, standing up on stage and looking to see who's wrote what and repackaging it as your own and then saying you rose and you're on a journey ahead. Or there is none of that. You'll be given more deeds or more understanding and clarity of your faith. That's the path forward. It's a path of humility, walking with humility, and God will use you to guide others. Let me give you an example. My mom, she had a stroke. When she had a stroke, she couldn't speak. And all she could say was, La ilaha illallah, there is no God except Allah. And so when people would call her, for everything they said, she had to say, La ilaha illallah. And when they would call her, because she'd say just La ilaha illallah, they had to say La ilaha illallah back, because there's a response to her saying La ilaha. They would say La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasul. So when they come visit her, she would say again La ilaha illallah when they would come visit her. And so they all would have to repeat La ilaha illallah. So I watched this live where she went through this very difficult situation, illness. And people visiting her all came and benefited from visiting. They all had to say La ilaha illallah, because this is a very important, a very heavy deed that my mom was doing. And they were participating in this also deed, the greatest dhikr. And they were also sitting there, instead of saying, he said, she said, she took them away from gossip, into saying La ilaha illallah. So now they're praising God. So this is a way of how God pushes you forward. This is how he uses you as an instrument to guide others, to benefit others. So you benefit yourself, and then you benefit others. So you don't need to rise again, like, hey, people, you see me. What you do is now you walk with humility, and God uses you as an instrument to benefit yourself and to benefit others. It could be as simple as saying La ilaha illallah on your stroke patient. It could be that you're writing and other people are benefiting from your writing, like my writings that Yasin Mugahed is benefiting tremendously from. She literally was nobody. Her entire books, as well as all her life-changing seminars, are basically repackaging of my writings. And I've asked her if she would like, we could look at the timeline. Authorship is in the timeline. I could show you when I wrote on these themes, and you could show me when you wrote on these themes. I could show you when I discussed and researched them in my writings, and you could show me when you discussed and researched them. And I can guarantee you, my work always predates yours. Maintaining narrative control and authority. Now, they feel shame. Shame that they have nothing original to add to the conversation. Shame that they were shaming and shaming and shaming. And now they want to go from being the arsonist, the town gossiper, into the firefighter. So there is this need to maintain narrative control and authority. The obsession with analyzing and misrepresenting others is also a tactic to maintain authority over how a person is perceived by the world. So this is where she gets this issue of right. She's obsessed with how people see her, not how she behaved in the eyes of God throughout this whole situation. So she curates identities. She misrepresents thoughts, emotions without their input. Never have I received an email asking me how I think or how I feel. Obsessed with individual attempts to create a version of events that serves her own narrative rather than the truth. This is about somebody who feels entitled, kind of like Satan. This is how they act. She avoids scrutiny. She was sent an email publicly and privately to be interviewed, her and her husband, about their marriage, about her divorce, about her life. What was she like in high school? Can I see her high school yearbook? Can I talk to her high school classmates? Can I interview them about her life story? Because those are some of the things they were running around trying to attack me. So can we open it up is what I'm saying. Can we open up the scrutiny? The way you scrutinize my life, I'd like to scrutinize your life. Are you open to cross-examination? And so they avoid scrutiny. Eliminating threats. Misrepresentation is editing and rewriting a target's character is a key strategy for bullies to isolate, to discredit, and to eventually eliminate those they perceive as a threat to their own image. And so she sees me as a threat to her image. She wants to be a spiritual guru. She wants to be seen and perceived as Ibn Ata'Allah. She wants to be quoted. She wants people to do memes and say, Yasmin Mogah had said. She'll even take the words of Ibn Ata'Allah and she'll put her name on it. The words of Ali ibn Abu Talib, and she'll put her name on it. The words of Prophet Muhammad, upon him peace and blessings, and she'll put her name on it. And no one called her out for this total lack of ethics, lack of self-respect. Nobody said, this is wrong. So it's all about management and image control. This is where they get into the rise. If somebody really liked the idea of shame, they would invite the author and say, hey, I really was interested in this theme you started. Can we talk? Can I interview you? Can I understand your thoughts, your feelings? How did you come to know what you know? What is your methodology that you came about these writings and these themes? I'd like to know. Instead of my searching here and searching there and making all this conjecture, I'd like to know from you. Can you tell me about what is your methodology that you came through this understanding or these themes? What experiences, what understanding, what discussions took place? Not one of them asked these questions. Not one. And not one of them was open to being interviewed. The driver of unacknowledged shame, deep-seated unhealed shame, is a primary driver behind the need to psychoanalyze and gang up on others. If somebody's healthy, they're full of love, they're full of compassion, they're full of faith. The things that they're telling you to rise, they're full of confidence. I've never met confident people repackage other people's writings as their own. So confident people is not you standing and getting a crowd. And you're basking in the fact that somebody's celebrating you with someone else's writings. Confident people will interview the person who wrote that on their platform and not feel threatened that that person's on their platform. And people are realizing that that's the person who started with this theme and these writings. If you're so confident, then I challenge you to show me that confidence. Because here she's claiming that building confidence, resilience, and clarity for the journey ahead. That's fine. So I challenge you to demonstrate to me that you have resilience, confidence, and courage. Interview me on your platform. That is the manifestation and demonstration of your confidence. Not to speak about me, but speak to me directly on your platform. let me question you and you can question me. That's the demonstration of confidence, courage, and clarity. It'll be clear about the ideas who talked about these things. My writings will become clear. You no longer see me as a threat that you have to keep running to your sheikhs who are behind the scenes trying to push you with my writings. You'll be like, I can face you. I can face you directly on my platform. You'll no worry about people saying, oh, this is the original writer of these themes. You won't be threatened by that. So I'm challenging you. Don't rise. You don't need to rise. Just put me on your platform. Stay where you're at. I challenge you. If you have confidence, resilience, and clarity on your journey as you claim, put me on your platform and ask me questions directly and allow me to ask you questions in return directly. Prove to me that you carry those realities that you claim and you're trying to teach others and share with others. Those who fear exposure or accountability often rely on triangulation or group reinforcement to shield themselves from uncomfortable truths. She's not going to do that. She's not going to interview me. She's not going to open herself to be interviewed on her platform. She will continue, her and her members will continue to take my writings and transfer them to themselves, just like this one did, just like she did. Okay, so they will continue to do that. Dalia Mugahid will continue to do that. They will not be able to do that. And then they'll say, confidence, courage, compassion. But if you have that, then I'm Muslim, you're Muslim, I'm Arab, you're Arab. I'm a woman, you're a woman. Supposedly we're for women's rights. The same thing for her. Then put me on your platform. Let's have one-on-one conversation. Instead of talking about me, let's talk to each other. Demonstrate to me that you don't have unacknowledged shame driving you and driving your seminars. Demonstrate it to me, because I doubt you'll be able to do that. Given how they treated me, abuse upon abuse upon abuse, shaming upon shaming upon shaming, they want to avoid remorse. And so remorse, it's an empowering process of self-cleansing. The ego-driven response to shame is pride. You get on stage and you try to promote yourself, and you're looking for validation from people. Remorse is a beautiful process which leads to God, as I said. And God, if he senses you're true and you're sincere, then he facilitates the road to guidance. He even facilitates the road to people coming on the journey with you that will help you. He might also bring teachings to you. For example, some of the teachings of Sheikh Ash'ari, like Ayud, if you have, again, this conversation with God, he'll bring these teachings to you that help clarify and clarify and clarify a lot of the issues that you may be experiencing. Other teachers as well. But he will help you on that road. It preoccupies your mind with thinking about, important things of the faith. He preoccupies your limbs with engaging with the issues that deal with the faith. He preoccupies you with what will benefit you in this world, or what will benefit you in the hereafter, and what will benefit people in this world, and what will benefit people in the hereafter. So look to see where you're preoccupied, because it's not something you can do. It's something that God uses you. You become an instrument, and he facilitates that road for you. But the issue you have to ask yourself is that internal dialogue between you and God. Is it the dialogue of Satan with God, or is it the dialogue of Adam with God? So don't escape remorse, because if you have that Adamic response or dialogue with God, then you would not have responded with shame, shame, shame. You would have probably reached out and said, hey, sister, if you were wrong, you did this, I felt this, the impact on me was this. Or you would say, you wrote this, don't agree with it, but can I talk with you about it? Or you would even come and say, I disagree with you passionately on this, and here's why. I'd like to hear your reason for, get your feedback on what I said. None of that happened with any of these individuals. None. So what conversation took place between them and God? They escaped remorse. course, on public, they beautiful, gorgeous remorse, repenting, but then shame, shame, shame. I've never met a person who's full of love, compassion, and, faith that is shaming others. Then we talk about distraction from inadequacy. Bullies and those obsessed with power. Look at people who are obsessed with power. Look at any character who's obsessed with power. Put aside this mutual misunderstanding or antagonism. Sometimes you have to be emotionally distant from a particular problem and look at situations either in the past, because there's an emotional distance, and you'll notice certain ways that they talk, certain ways that they think, certain behaviors that they engage in. People who are bullies are obsessed with power. They project their shortcomings onto others. If you look historically, you see that pattern, specifically to distract and divert attention away from their own perceived incompetence. So they're not trying to build societies. They're trying to control societies, in their own image. Not as they are, like, that you can't have here, Africa, and here the Middle, East or West Asia is what we really refer to it. And here Europe, and here, Latin America. They can't have them in their own reality and just speak about nurturing principles, values that will benefit or healthy boundaries. No, they want them in their own image. They want them all to be a clone of them, how they think, how they feel, what they like, what they hate. You'll notice that pattern if you study it. And so ask yourself, are you giving healing advice, or are you giving advice of how someone should be a clone of you? Kind of sit with that question, because a lot of the advice comes across as advice that a bully gives, how I should be a clone of you. If I respond to a particular situation based on what I believe is right, and you disagree, we can have a conversation on what is the way to respond to this situation. You can present, back and forth. But for you to transgress that bounds and start shaming and saying you're full of guilt and blah, and add tons upon tons of, arson, and then come back after you did all the arson for year upon year upon year to be the firefighter. It's ridiculous. I don't know how you can sit with yourself. But this obsession with redefining others is essentially a mirror of malice. By attempting to lock others into a narrative, of your own making. You created the narrative and you insist that that person must fit that narrative. And that the person is actually showing the world the internal prison that they have built for themselves. So this is the internal prison that she has built for herself. If she claims she's not in that internal prison, then going on stage is not, to me, interpreted as somebody who has confidence, resilience, clarity, strength, closeness to God, self-compassion, mercy, and she doesn't have internal shame. I don't interpret it that way. What I interpret is, if you are going to let go of shame on your journey, this dispute, put me on your platform. Show me you're not threatened by my writings. You're not threatened by my moral clarity. You're not threatened by my confidence. And I will also share and listen to your ideas, and then you can listen to mine. I will question you about how your methodology of how you came to know this class. And you can question me of how I came to know and write about shame. Open, transparent. This is what demonstrates to me you and members of your crew, your reinforcement gang, if you can speak with me directly on your platforms that reach millions upon millions of followers, show me that you're confident. Show me that you're open to transparency. Show me that you're not threatened by my writings, and that's why you're constantly, coming up with these talks that try to lock me in to a narrative so that you can feel comfortable with who you are reinventing yourself to be, that you are not. Unless you allow me to interview you publicly on your platform, or you interview me, or we both interview each other publicly on your platforms. I'll end this with saying, you are full of shame. You are full of shame. You cannot be the arsonist and then now go on a seminar to tell people that you have been throwing shame upon shame upon shame to let go of shame. The letting go is create a platform, open and transparent to all the audiences that have listened in one way, only to you, where we can question each other on the methodology and the timeline of the writings behind what I write and what you're writing. And it becomes as clear as day to the audience who came up with the themes, what is the methodology behind the themes, what are the life experiences behind the themes, and the moral clarity will be evident. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.